I can. Hello, can you hear me okay? So yes, you're coming in clear for me.
Yes, Jeff, I'm able to hear you just fine. I'm wondering, Tracy, I'm hoping it's not your, like, the camera, I'm not sure. But let's maybe try having her talk for a little bit and see if it gets better.
No, you're good. Just
might be the camera with the lag and
Yeah.
too much.
not as high as that one anyway.
All right.
A lot of sweat.
So I think, let me,
He's really trying not to be on the page.
Tracy, I'll make you a host or co-host here. And I'm going to record this. Oh, now I made you host, so you're going to have to give me the okay to record our meeting, so.
No problem. Is that work for you?
Yep. You're still a little bit garbled.
Yeah.
Let me try one other thing here.
That's better.
Is that any better?
It's
Hard to tell.
almost like there's an echo for some reason.
Does this work?
Talk a little bit more. Yeah.
Well, you are moving. How are you doing in the central time zone?
I could understand it.
Not good. Oh, shoot.
Tracy, are you on headphones perchance?
I'm not.
Do you have them there that you could, let's try hooking up your headphones because I'm wondering if that will fix the problem.
Sure. One moment.
Thank you, everybody, for your patience and grace here. I want to make sure you can hear okay.
Are you able to hear me now?
Sounded old.
talking a little bit?
Are you able to hear me now?
I think that's better, team. Is that better on your end?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, perfect.
No.
So you guys want to introduce yourselves, or would you like me to introduce you?
I can start us off, Jeff, and I'm going to keep my camera off to not mess up what we got going on here, but my name is Dr. Lori Miller, and I am a partner for the Donovan Group, and I am thrilled and grateful to be able to support you all as you're working through your referendum engagement process. And one of the things that we learned in first engaging with you all is that as a board, you're considering a number of options for solutions to present to your community. And we thought it would be a great first step to inform your decision making by engaging with this community survey. And so Tracy here is our only survey strategist at this time. She is really well revered and understands a lot about Minnesota as well. She has some background in the state and nearby. So at this moment, I'm going to turn it over to Tracy to share your survey results. And we're here to answer any questions that you have. Again, our goal here is to share with you what your community thinks so that we can support your decision-making process moving forward. So with that, Tracy, I'll turn over to you.
Thank you very much, Lori. Thank you all for having me today and letting me be there with you virtually. I am your neighbor just on the other side of the Red River, but I am currently in Seattle, Washington at a conference. So I'm coming to you from the West Coast. But it's wonderful to be here with you. It's been a pleasure to work with your Lake of the Woods team on the survey to learn a little bit more about your school system and what you are all working through and what you are working towards.
So
I'm
going to stop. It's really hard to.
Yeah, it went right back, Tracy.
Are you able to log out and log back in maybe, or I don't know.
Yeah, let's try that.
Maybe
Lori-
it's where I live with a
Lori's
toddler,
coming
but
in
I
very
understood it all.
You understood all that?
I understood all of it. I could understand it, but it's like
not fun to listen
mumbly
to.
or something, echoey or
Let's-
something.
Yeah. Let's try it, Tracy. You want to jump off and jump on again and see if that makes a difference? Sorry.
no problem. Here we go. So, Jeff, I may need to make you the host quick before I do that.
Oh, yes, yeah. Perfect. I hope this works, everyone. If not, Jeff, I can try to do the lead here in the presentation.
So she had a motel or something, and she's out of town.
She is,
Can you?
yeah, she's at the National School Public Relations Association for schools, so.
So it might be a.
Can she give it without having her video? Because
Yeah.
that can, if she's at a hotel, she may have limited internet and
Yeah, right.
only might work.
Right. All right, let's see.
Is this any better?
No?
Why don't,
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Tracy, like, they can hear you and all, it's just that it's like really, it almost seems like there's interference of some kind. So I'm wondering if you can share the screen and kind of drive, and I can speak through the survey results if that's easier for everybody. With you kibitzing in when I start to falter, because this is your baby.
That works for me. Jeff, would you mind making me a co-host again so I can share my screen?
yep.
Oh, you just sounded great now, though. Did she sound good to everybody else?
No.
No, she's still underwater.
Oh, okay, sorry. Oh, goodness.
Did Tracy need to be the host to share her screen? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
Tracy needs to be the
Lori.
host.
Did I do that backwards?
I thought.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Tracy's gonna share her screen.
Lori, you need to make Tracy the host. I made the wrong person the host, sorry.
Oh, okay. No worries.
Love technology.
Where do I do that? I'm looking.
You
Participants?
might have to give it back to me, maybe.
You can reclaim right there, bottom right.
Yeah, there you are. Here it comes.
White-
No. Leave right
Over
there, yeah.
there we go.
Yeah. And
Okay.
There we go.
Right person. All right, now you can share your screen, Tracy.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.
All right. So let's jump into this. And please feel free to pause.
Recording in progress.
Sorry.
That's okay, you're okay. So we always like to start out by sharing that, a little bit of background about how do we engage in the survey process. You can see that we had the survey open for a couple of weeks there in late June. And the purpose is really for us to get a sense from your community what they believe are the district's needs, to give you some feedback on some preliminary solutions and help you, make that decision for next steps. We had a total of 278 respondents complete the survey. We were shooting for 300, so and I think you'll see that we feel like we got enough respondents, even though we were shooting for 300. I think that we feel pretty confident in what we're sharing with you tonight as a good predictor of what your community is feeling. And the reason we feel that is because Tracy here uses a weighted system. We look at how many of those 278 respondents are part of a comparison group. And of the 278, she determined that 81 of our total respondents, or approximately 29%, was made up of district residents who are not current parents of preschool or school-age students, or they're not employees or students. And why that's important is we know that most communities, particularly rural communities, about 75, if not 80% of your community is going to fall into that category of district residents who are not currently really tightly associated with the school district. So we give them a little bit more weight with their responses, because we have learned over the years that gives us a better predictability of what the day would look like with the election. Anything you'd add there, Tracy, that I can?
We did that perfectly.
Okay, perfect. All right, next slide. So the following data points are not based on a scientific sample. What we do is we use a convenience sample because just from a methodology standpoint, it would be inappropriate to conduct our analysis or calculate error using a scientific sample. So those of you that are survey specialists, this means a lot to you. For me, it's not as important, but for Tracy, it's super important. Next slide. So let's get into the questions. We always like to start out by asking just some overall satisfaction questions. And the reason we do that is it gives us some good information about where we might have to double down on some of our communication efforts leading up to the referendum itself. So here we ask how satisfied everyone is with the Lake of the Woods School District. And when you look at everybody's responses, you can see that 51% strongly agree or agree. If we just focus on the 81 individuals who make up about 29% of the respondents, those again who don't have any tight association to the district, you can see that drops down to about 38%. So what that tells us is we have an opportunity to demonstrate to everyone in our community the value add that the district brings. And I know one of the things that Jeff and I have talked about is just trying to work on building trust and satisfaction following, some of the things that the district recently has experienced. And so that's an opportunity for us, and we're working through that right now. Next slide. How familiar are you with the facility and operational needs? This is really fantastic to see this. So this means that you have done a good job up to this point, making everyone aware that you do have needs, to see that 91% see that they understand that you have needs, and to see that comparison group very high. This tells us that people understand you have needs. So that's a very good first step. The next step is how much support do they have for those needs, right? So next slide. We asked them specifically first about the capital project levy, and we asked them to determine their support in voting yes on a $400,000 capital project levy question to address your most urgent needs. And those needs were identified in the survey, which the survey does do a good job of serving as an informational piece as well. Here you have 64% of everyone who responded that said they would vote yes. And you can see we have in the comparison group really close to that halfway point, 48%. That's informative to us. If we went to this question today with your stakeholders, we believe it would not pass. Now, we have time between now and the election day to work on making sure that we share our needs. But if we go back one slide, people aren't responding because they don't understand that there are needs, right? We're seeing that they see that there's needs. But when we ask them about that capital project levy, it looks like that comparison group, we don't have enough support. And one of the things we'll talk about tonight is how important it is to listen to our survey results. Let's continue on, and then we'll answer questions here. So the next one is, I believe the district's building and facility maintenance needs must be addressed now. Now, this is fantastic to see, right? We're looking at that comparison group. You're well over 50% there. So we do have support in the sense that they believe something must be done around your building and facility maintenance needs. Next slide. So given the information above, how likely are you to support a building bond referendum on the November 2024 ballot? You can see here you have enough support that people say, yep, we need a building bond referendum on the November ballot. And then we go a little deeper. I would vote yes on a $4 million building bond referendum question to address the most urgent building and facility needs. And you can see here that you have great support from everyone, and you're over that 50% mark with the comparison group. And again, this is without doing a lot of engagement that might garner you even more support. Next slide. We went another step further, and we asked, would they vote yes on a $5 million building bond referendum question that not only addresses the most urgent building and facility needs, but also includes addressing the athletic field complex. Here you can see that support from both groups drops somewhat significantly. You're still over that 50% mark with everyone, but I think your comparison group will indicate here that that's probably not the direction you want to go at this time. I believe the district's operational needs must be addressed now. Here you got great support. Again, people understand you need to do something right now. You're well over that 50% with your comparison group. And so given that information, how likely are you to support an operating referendum on the November 2024 ballot? Here you have 62% of all, and you're under that 50% mark with the comparison group. Let's look at the next response here, the next question. So we asked them specifically, I would vote yes to create a voter-approved operating referendum of $4.97 per pupil. You're sitting okay with support with the whole, but again, very close to the point that kind of like you have to weigh as the district, is that a question worth asking? You know, you have the ability to ask more than one question, but it's going to be tight. And right now, our comparison, our weighted group is definitely indicating that there's not enough support there. And then we asked them this question, you know, like, what if we put them all together, right? So we thought this would be worthwhile to ask, since we're looking at a number of options or solutions here with the November ballot. So we asked them to weigh in on all three. Would they support all three? And your general population is, yes, they would, but we fall a little short with that comparison group. Tracy, what am I missing that you wanted to make sure you expressed to this group tonight?
I think you did a wonderful job. Something I would make sure that I include as well is for all of these different options, whether it was the capital project levy, the building bond, or operational, we asked the individuals who said probably not or definitely not to share a little bit more of why they responded that way. And so we shared a few options that we thought might be why. Tax tolerance, which in many cases at least 20% or 1 out of 5 would reply that way. And then we also saw some other responses. A little information about is there any additional efficiencies in the current budget, or what has been done in the current budget to address what has been going on. So sharing more information about that. Other funding mechanisms, specifically towards the end of the survey, that came up. Are there grants or other state funds? And so we do have a number of qualitative responses. I didn't put them in the report, but a number of responses that are in the report, not in the presentation, that will point to areas to share information, questions that individuals have, and may help you with that informational campaign for regardless of what you choose to do moving forward, will most likely help you inform those next steps.
Yeah, so we've put forward a lot, and we want to make sure we answer all your questions to help you kind of grapple with this information, use this information in a way that informs your next steps. Knowing that that's the purpose tonight, what questions can we address for the board right now? Or Jeff, is there anything you want to weigh in first before we take questions?
No, I'll let them come up with their questions. As far as the survey results, or they also have a copy of the full report. And I put it off your one.
Wonderful.
Results.
Yeah.
So they have a
Good. Good. Yeah, we like to create a one-page survey summary that you can make visible back, right? This is part of building that trust and transparency with your community, to say thank you for participating, and here's what we learned. And then as you work as a board to listen to the results and decide what you might want to do as next steps, it's a great opportunity to go back to that document and say, look, we're listening. And that again helps build trust between the board, admin, and your overall community.
Everyone ready?
Fire one ready.
Okay, I can hear both of you very clearly now, so appreciate
Oh,
that.
good. Perfect.
Board Member Tim Lyon, is there a standard percentage that when you do one of these surveys is negative? I mean, just what percentage of the community that traditionally shows up and says no? Absolutely not. And I referenced question number 12 where you asked them, or what you just had on the screen, I would definitely not support it. That question, survey question 22, excuse me.
Tracy?
Typically, yes. Well, typically with behavioral research in particular, it could be anywhere from 10 to 20%. So you'll have 10 to 20% that will always be in favor. Anything you ever ask, we are here for you. Can we actually write out, a bigger check? Right. And then on the other side, there's a very similar percentage on the other side, but the supermajority lies in between. And so they can be convinced one way or another with additional information. But it is typically at least 10% on either side would absolutely support it or will definitely not. And then again, with those definitely not, probably not as well, but definitely not, would come through very much in those qualitative responses of, it's the economy, it's all these other things right now, I just can't afford it. Is there anything else we can do? Can we look at it over time? And so those responses will be really helpful in informing that as well. But again, back to your original question, I would say at least 10% typically would be in that group.
So just to segue on that, so you got a line that says, I would definitely not support it, your comparison group, which you seem to think is maybe the more valuable component in this, is at 32% on the last question, hey, do you want to fund all three of these? So we look at that, and a knee-jerk reaction would be, there is some validity in their opinion, regardless of whether or not we're going to convince them one way or the other. At 32%, we're already twice what you think is probably a normal average. So, we just absolutely throwing ourselves to the wolves by asking for all three.
Right. We won't tell you what to do, but yes, I would affirm what you're thinking.
So
Yes, and this was a great idea by Lori and others to have this last question. It's not one we always do in the survey, where we will revisit all of those questions and tally it up for them. But this is a great way for them to know, regardless of how you answered individually, if we do this in sum. One thing to make sure to keep in mind is we had that piece for the building bond, whether it was $4 or $5 million. And so that may have also swayed some individuals in how they responded to that piece as well, since it's 4 or 5.
So this is Board Member Lynn Ellis, and I guess this is kind of along the same vein. To me, it appears that from just the survey results would be that our best bet would go to one question, unless we can sway people, would go to the question of the $4 million capital project or the building bond. That seems to be the clearest way we should go at this point, and I realize that with more education and more information, people might change. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, so thank you, Tracy, for a survey. Yeah, survey question number 15. Here it looks favorable. I think we'd like to see less percentages than that, probably not, or definitely not. But the comparison weight being 54%, that's over that, 50% or that need for the majority. I think that there's promise there that, that I would validate what you're saying, ma'am, and say, yeah, I think that that seems clear as a pathway to go for sure.
Well, and then the other piece is that 14 and 15 are so close. Is that meaningful at all?
Yes. Right.
14 is whether they would support a building bond referendum, and then the 15 is about the $4 million amount.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes, so one of our colleagues calls it a funnel. So we use a funnel approach. And so with this question, 13, we're really looking in general.
Yeah.
Would they support it? Then we get with more specificity with question 14, and we gave them some more information, and we talked about the timeline, and then gave them a little more information, and then with question 15, then we talked about a specific dollar amount. And as we do that, and you get more specific, you do tend to lose a little support, just because it becomes a little bit more real for individuals, and then they're really asking themselves, can I support this? Do I have enough information? Does this tax tolerance work for me, or do I have this tax tolerance?
I just thought it was interesting to see that in relationship, those three are the most, I mean, that item is the most favorable.
Right.
And then, as long as we're going down that road, now you present, let's say we present both of those on the ballot, how much do you see us diluting that vote potential by trying to split that vote? As opposed to, do you put it on the ballot as an and question, or do you put it on as an or question?
Yeah, my concern, Tracy, we may have different points of view, but my experience, I'm a former superintendent who's had success passing a number of referenda. I worry from a strategy standpoint, if you include both, I think you want to work as a board to land on the question with regards to your building bond, because of just what you noted. It tends to split the vote, and then you don't have enough support for either option. So I think you really want to narrow down and land on the question that you want to ask for the building bond referendum.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes before this is going to time off, unfortunately.
Well, and maybe
Any other questions?
one more question would be, if we did the 4 million and then did either the operating referendum or the capital, would that dilute that vote the same way, do you think?
Like in one question, you mean,
Or in two separate
or two
questions?
separate questions?
I feel like if you did it in two separate questions, I don't feel as strongly like that would dilute your responses, but I feel like that's the work that you all have to decide. Is the building bond referendum your top priority? You seem to have enough support for that, so definitely go with that. How much of a priority is it to go for one of the others as well? And if that's such a high priority, then that's what we need to message and engage your community around. And we'll have to work really hard if you do two questions to make sure that people understand the importance of those two questions and how they are separate from each other, and that one can pass without the other, and all the ramifications that are there within, so that we can avoid a split of the vote. I don't know, Tracy, what would you add to that?
I agree. It tends to be very specific to the community and the discussions that you're having. Having worked in a school community before, we had a discussion where we needed to decide if we were going to replace or fix a building. We were talking about roofing replacements. We were talking about safety and security. And we did a survey as well. And so it's really specific to our community and where are the levels of support for all of those individual items. And then do we think if we package them together, we can get over, for us in North Dakota, it's the 60% plus one. Could we do that together? There were many individuals, since we had safety and security on there, they wanted to see us separated out. And there's rationale for that as well. And so again, it's really unique. I know that's a non-answer, but that's the good and the bad of it, is that it really is unique to each community. And I would say if you would do more than one question, you would need to be very, very specific about the money and where exactly it's going. Because that came through, you'll see that in the report and the qualitative results, is that they really want to understand how those funds would be spent. And so with enough information, you may be able to convert enough of those individuals, and they're probably not, to vote for it.
Right. Can we go back, Tracy, to the capital project levy?
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's just take a look at each of them one more time. So yeah, I'm looking. So you have 28% that are like definitely not. That's pretty high. But yet, you're very close to that 50%. You have 23 there of the weighted group that probably not. So I guess the question here is how much information have you shared so far with the community to help them understand why this is a need? And you have to kind of ask yourself, is this such a priority over the building bond referendum that it's worth risking a divide or split in the vote at all for that building bond referendum? Like, that's how I would approach that thinking. And if we go to the last one, which is for operational, yeah, you're kind of in the same boat there. And if you scroll down, oh yeah, that's it, okay.
So I think the capital projects one, in my mind, would be probably our top priority.
It is, okay, yeah.
Just because of the fact that it's less impactful for local taxpayers, because it falls under the same type of taxing system as the building bonds levy. So it does include the seasonal rec. And I think if we can educate people to understand that
Right.
using that money to buy buses and technology and pay for curriculum actually helps our operating general fund, because we're not having to spend it on buses, we can spend it on
Right.
teacher. And we're at 48% with the capital projects as far as the comparison group. I think we can educate and also, to me, that's our biggest concern right now.
Over the,
Trying to get that.
over the building one, or?
Yeah, so I think that's
as far as an operational, we budgeted no new computers, no buses. I mean, we put a hard freeze even with all of our cuts. So.
This is Board Member Boyd Johnson. I've got a question for you guys with like the
66.
question 21 and 23 and 24. So it's where they're showing their concerns. Looks like you had 106 responded in question 21, 126 in question 23, and 90 in question 24. What I'm looking for is, do you have a breakdown? I mean, the information's good, but I'm curious how many repeat times you saw those reasonings regarding the confidence of the school district, financial management, etc. Is it 106 all said the confidence? Is it 50? Is it, or try and get an idea of what we're looking at? And it is kind of interesting how they're, yeah, I thought that was going to happen.
Can we reconvene?
It will let you go back in and start the meeting.
So stop.
I'm sorry.
So while he's looking at that, my take on that is when you throw, if 28% of the people were unhappy with the tax impact, that's the highest grouping, you know, that was the reasons why they didn't want to get into this, then you've got, I think you've got the potential to take either the capital projects or the building bond, whatever it is we decided, and say, here's one. It just so happened that in that way that was presented, now they're being asked for tax number 2, so there'd be a necessary drop down in terms of their positive response. Does that make sense? So they're saying, wait a minute, didn't we just do this? You know, we just did a building bonds levy. So I think that if you concentrated your efforts on the capital projects, you could achieve the capital projects. If you concentrate on the building bond, you can achieve the building bond. The same base is going to vote for either, is my impression, but the same base is also going to start stepping away from, because you got 28% of them saying, that's too much taxes, and that's the 6% drop or whatever it was we saw on that. I don't know if I'm interpreting that right, but that's my take on it. I also get the sense that they tout the 91% are very, or somewhat familiar. How many people have you talked to who really understand what it is we're proposing here? And I don't get the sense that even those, I mean, people who have been in and out of the school a lot, have had kids in here, have worked here, still don't understand what it is we're asking for. So I think that
That answer does surprise me maybe a little bit, that
Yeah, it's so high.
in the group that doesn't have any kids in school, half of them say they're somewhat familiar. I mean, 80+% say they're
With our
familiar.
needs.
They're familiar or very familiar.
so. And speaking as somebody who's not to have kids in the school anymore, how easy it is to get out of touch with the school. Right? And that's where I'm going with that, is I think that we have a job in front of us, which is obviously picking what it is we want to sell, but I think that the community's willing to do it if we focus on exactly what it is we want and not just throw out generalities, you know, and say, this is what we're funding. We're funding
You can
bus.
admit, Lori.
I think some of the events we have at school, like the Spring Fest thing or whatever, and some of the dance stuff and all the other ones going on, I think that brings in a lot of people who wouldn't normally be at the school.
Yeah. The grandparents.
But how many
We are back. Yeah. Hello. So we were just about ready to email you a response to that last question, but I'm gonna let Tracy take over.
Well, before you do
Sure.
that, I was kind of in the middle of it, so
Okay.
my main thing was, I'm looking to see, are those all individual, are those unique numbers? Or are some of them combined, like one person put 2 or 3 different things? Like what kind of actual numbers do we have for those? Because they seem to be very repetitive. And of the really repetitive ones, what kind of numbers are we looking at?
Yes, it's a great question. So those comments that are towards the top of the bulleted list, so I'm looking at number 21 in the report right now. So those comments that are towards the top, we're seeing more frequently. Now, I went through and looked at them. Typically what they would tell you to do in our master's courses is they'd say 3 individuals should look at these. We don't have 3, but we have artificial intelligence, so I feed them into 2 different systems as well. And so they are the most common. Now, I didn't tally them, so I couldn't say, for example, there were 15 times bullet number 1 was mentioned and 10 times bullet number 2, but that's something I can absolutely do. But again, this list is more of a rank order where those items at the top were the ones that came through most frequent. Sometimes some individuals did write a little bit more, and they might mention something about they didn't want their taxes to go up, but at the same time that they would appreciate more long-term planning. But again, if that's something you'd be interested in, we have all of those comments. I can absolutely share all of those comments with all of you. I can go in and tally them. I can do any additional analysis that you would like.
I think the ones I know I would be interested in, because it's the top ones for, I think, all 3 of them. Concerns regarding trust, confidence, and district leadership, concerns regarding fiscal management, overall opposition to increased taxes. Even if you just hit those 3, I think that would cover a lot of them. Because those
Absolutely.
are the top 3 of each, roughly.
Yes, I can do that.
That would be great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or thoughts that we can help you with?
This is a small enough community that we probably know half of who the absolutely not on any given day type respondents would be. I mean, so we're not, I mean, it's kind of like discussing abortion. You're not going to, push one person one side or the other. They've got their mind made up.
Right.
So how do you go about targeting that middle ground? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's what we do, right? So we know this with every referendum engagement process that we engage with the community, is that we have those similar kind of populations that we have an opportunity to change their mind. There are those we're never going to change, but we call them the irrational ones, right? Like there's irrational yes voters, which Tracy said, you know, like, that would be my husband and I, we're both former educators, we would vote yes on every referendum that came in. Like Tracy said, we'd be like, how much more can we write a check for, right? Those are the irrational yes voters. And then you have a group of the irrational no voters. You're not going to change their minds. They're always going to vote no. Maybe because they're not supporters of public education or they just don't want their taxes to go up. But where we focus our engagement efforts is around those that are in the middle, where the supermajority is. And so we have a roadmap of all kinds of engagement and communication tools that we have drafted up for Lake of the Woods School District. So some of those things include like weekly social media posts, a web page that has a FAQ on it that will continue to add questions and answer questions that come up in the community. There's going to be a lift here in terms of community engagement, like getting out in front of as many different community groups that you can, even as small as your community is, to have that opportunity to walk people through, these are our needs, here's our proposed solution, and here's how we're being good stewards of taxpayers' dollars so that we can build that trust back up and have people willing to invest. Answering their questions definitely helps. Addressing some of the concerns that we've learned about here and being targeted with that approach in the survey, we can take this information and start to build up communications regarding that. We typically do 3 mailers. You know, if we're looking at, you know, cost, and that would maybe fall hard on the taxpayers there, we might limit it down to 2, or we engage with communication in terms of fact sheets and signage throughout the community that way. So all this to say is we go through a lot of different strategies, and that's what you have us for, is to help you and Jeff through that. And I think, Jeff, we're at a point where we could probably share the roadmap with the board if that's something that would be found to be useful.
Yep.
Okay. So that was a very general answer. That there's a lot of detail behind that answer that we're poised to help you with.
This is Boyd Johnson again. Okay, kind of back to those same 3 questions. I was just looking closer. Do you have any right off your cuff insight? So question 21, it was which one? The referendum for the 497 for pupils. 106 bothered to type in responses. For the 400,000 capital project, 126 typed in responses. And then for the last one, 90 people typed in. I'm just curious if you have any insight. I'm kind of surprised that they're that wide ranging, since it's kind of the same question, and you'd think the people might give the same answer, or after they do it once, do they get tired, or what?
There is a little bit of both, and I will say that, again, we did see some of the same themes of the responses over time, but again, with this question 21 in particular, this is where we saw student retention, so a little bit more about talking about your enrollment numbers. And so that was really one of the first times that was brought up into the survey. So there is a little uniqueness. And what's really great about having qualitative questions in a survey of this nature is it does make individuals stop and think. So with this question in particular, we did give them those options at the top. The cost is too high, the impact is too great, regardless of any amount, I won't support a referendum, I don't have enough information, and then other. So they were able to pick from those, and they could have chose to move on, but many individuals who had selected probably or definitely not did take the time to give a little bit more information, which is great. And that's not always typical of every survey. And so again, what's really great about that is it gives us a look into what their thoughts and what their concerns are. And, you know, as we're looking at 21, where you've got 28% of them saying regardless they won't support a referendum, then we're getting to that irrational no. But there's other individuals that, again, they're just looking for more detail. I would go back to the capital project levy. There's some individuals that questioned technology piece of this, and do we really need to do that? And so it's just adding that specificity of, you know, we need to have a replacement cycle, for example, and explaining what that is. And so what's great is that there were some reoccurring things, but in each one, there was something unique that also came up as well, which again, when I had visited with Lori and Jeff, I'd said, and Lori knows this very well as well, is that it really helps inform those communication pieces. And then earlier in the report, we had also asked them about their communication preferences. And somewhat unique to your school system, friends and neighbors are one of the most common ways where people receive their information. And so making sure that you arm your employees and your parents with that information, because again, they're not necessarily in that comparison group, but they are neighbors, they are Rotary colleagues, they live next to each other and they mow the lawn maybe on the same day. So making sure they have that information where they can share responses to some of this is really helpful and helps with that groundswell of support.
Any other thoughts or questions? While you're thinking about that, I would just say, I think that we're learning a lot from this survey, and there's a lot of positive here. And there's also, you know, I think there's some good strategies to glean from what we're hearing as feedback. So I think that, you know, this has been, it's proven to be a really good exercise to take this time to do this with your community. This is definitely going to help us all move forward and give us the best chance for success in passing a referendum.
And I know for myself, there's times that I need some more time with data, just the way that how I think. And so I'm not going away. We don't necessarily have another meeting or anything planned, but if something does come up, or Jeff, Lori, anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer them. Again, I'll look into more deeply into those qualitative, especially towards the end of the survey. But as you're looking this over and digesting it, and it's a lot to take in, there's a lot of great data and great questions that you asked. I'm here for you. It doesn't stop today, so I'm happy to do more analysis or answer any other questions that you have.
Yeah, yeah. We're going to be with you lockstep all the way here.
So in reference to that, how do we know that we're making an impact come the 1st of October, let's say, or September? I mean, where's the next sort of watershed moment we should be looking for?
I think where the next watershed moment, I think we're going to know how your community is doing once we have that opportunity to set the question or questions with, you know, with the board taking action, and then getting out there with a heavy engagement effort to communicate that and see what kind of response we're getting, right, from your community members as we do that. That's when we get a good sense of, you know, where we might have some things that we need to address and make sure that we do a better job informing prior to people getting to the polls.
Any other questions?
If not, like Tracy said, we're always here for you, and you can definitely send us questions after tonight too. So we're happy to answer them and do any other kind of analysis that you need us to do around the survey results.
Well, thanks, Lori and Tracy, for your time, and appreciate
Yes, and yes, Jeff, and we have some new things coming to you over the next couple of hours and days here, so we'll be in touch.
Sounds good.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, and thank you for bearing with me with my technical difficulties. I'm this, a 1,700 communicator, so there's just a little bit of internet for all of us. Oh, maybe their sessions might have ended now, so thank you again for bearing with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Did you guys understand the question I had asked them?
Which one?
I think,
Because they did not answer what I figured, yeah, there's no point. Kind of got, I
wait,
was
the
just,
question about the breakdown
Yeah.
of the
Same people
responses?
responding
well, it was the
way.
same people, but also, and actually it should have been question 17, I didn't see that, that was actually the first one. The fewest people responded with comments to the first one, and that's the school bond, $4 or $5 million, blah, blah, blah. And then more people responded to the next question, I think that was the operating. And then even more
123.
people responded to the operating budget one. So can you glean from that, that the more people that write in effectively
Why?
negative comments, that's an
They feel more
indicator that-
strongly about
that
it?
They're very strongly
Yeah,
opposed.
I can see that, because I think the
Yeah.
building bonds one is a pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
Feels pretty easy to understand, and then the farther you get into it, it gets a little more mired, and
Yeah.
how are you gonna spend the money? Operational, it's like a blank check, you know?
Yeah.
And if their confidence in us is low right now, then they're not gonna wanna write us a blank check.
Yeah.
Or whatever that is. Is that the
I
right
also
term?
assumed that the 88 in the first one, and the 90 in the second one, and the 106 in the third one, or whatever it was, and in the last one, that was original 88, put the same comments in all categories. Well, maybe not. That's where it'd be interesting to find out. It's like, okay, are more people piling on, or was it part of that original group carrying it all the way through?
Right, you've just added 20 more people,
Yeah.
and that's,
Yeah. So,
I think the survey was it's very helpful. I really appreciate that this was done.
oh, yeah, I think,
Yeah.
I don't think there's any surprises. I think it confirmed, I am a little surprised that there was more actionable, instead of which is good. So, but it kind of confirms exactly what we were suspecting about what to try to go for.
And I think it did a really good job of assembling all the information, and some of the first time that probably a lot of people saw, like, what's the tax impact?
Yeah.
You know, so it was a good way of getting out information.
Correct information.
Yeah,
I'm still not convinced the general public has a good grasp of what we're asking. I just don't get that. When we talk about things like, I get that in the fish house, oh, I hear they're cutting football. No, and that's coming
Yeah.
from people whose
I've
kids
heard-
are in school.
I
You
know. I've
Maybe
heard the
where are they
same
getting their information? Obviously, on a lawnmower.
And if you say that's
like,
I haven't heard that at all, it's like they almost still don't believe you. Like, that's
Yeah.
and I'm like, and then I'm questioning myself. I'm like, I've not heard this. Did I miss a meeting? I mean, but
And that was brought up at the Rotary meeting too, that there's lots of misperceptions in the community.
And that's one of the issues with friends and neighbors
Yeah.
talking.
over half,
How are you-
Over half of our people get information from friends and neighbors, so if one person has the wrong information, it keeps getting repeated, and it's kind of like the gossip
well, it's
thing
like
on
a game of telephone. It's
Yeah.
not the same.
and it's
Yeah.
it's a life lesson we've all learned, and yet we still fall into the same trap, we all do it.
And that's
And
something.
it's hard, and not that that isn't valuable, because it is, at least they're talking about it, but if we can get some of the people that do a lot of talking to have more complete information, that would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Suggest sending Jeff to the Senex and holiday coffee clubs, but. that
Howard's
would be a good
Roundtable?
thing.
I don't even know.
Tar and Heather's may be involved.
And that's something that I've been talking with Lori a lot about, is some of the trust issues. And we're working on some things to, is we can repeat things at the working sessions and I can point back. But I think we're trying to get something in writing. Owning mistakes and errors that were made. We've talked about that at different meetings, but also clarifying and making sure people have the accurate information.
I actually, that's the hard part too, because it's like, well, you guys need to be more transparent. It's like, we can't be any more transparent than we've been. I mean, other than going and telling doing the phone robocall thing and telling them that there was a problem. Because, and that's why the initial deficit was much bigger. It's because, well, we want to be transparent and let everyone know there's a problem. So, I mean, I remember the school board meeting and everything else. So, I mean, it's in the record, it's there, but most people, and I get it too, don't go digging for that information that's there. And so then we get accused of not being transparent when we actually are. I mean, we're not giving you a special phone call or anything, but we are transparent. At least I think we're transparent.
We just need to kind of use more different venues.
Yep.
To try to get as many as you can.
I don't know if you guys noticed, like, well, the big one was, it was like 72% get their information from the Northern Light, so it's unfortunate
huge.
they were in bad information on,
the big headline.
But was it 38? It was a fair percentage get their information from our own website. So.
Yeah, but social media,
I mean, our website up to date, and maybe with some of this information available on there. I mean, that's cheap. It's easy.
Is that something that Lori and Tracy have talked about, is what's on her website? And what should be
Not specific.
in relationship to this? You know, because I mean, anything educational that we put in the paper should, I think, be posted on our website as well.
Yeah, I think it should be whatever's produced. It's like
Well, and
in
it might be
every method of
Yeah.
communication.
a dedicated page to this effort versus
Right.
it goes in the announcements page, and
Right.
sometimes that gets buried, and because you've
Yeah.
got old stuff and new, but this could be its own page where it's just
Right.
that, it's
Something
just
that
easier
you
to
could
find
go
things.
from the website to that page, is that
Yeah,
what you're thinking?
like the
Yeah.
woodschool.org/referendum or something
Yeah.
like that.
And that's
But have
probably
a link
something,
on
just
it.
like with the survey, there'll be a specific link.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
kind of some of the roadmap stuff that she was talking about.
Yeah.
Just give
A very prominent link.
When she was
Yeah.
talking about like a daily post on her Facebook page.
They said they
Or a
sent you
reminder or whatever.
information, you have actual
We're
printouts.
working on it.
Okay.
We're not, it's in the rough draft stages. So the timeline here is next Monday. I'm hoping the board can be at a point where you're ready to move forward with the resolution on ballot questions. Either that or we're gonna have to have a special board meeting in early August, because the deadline to submit the ballot questions is August 13th. They moved it up 10 days. It used to be the 23rd. We have some information. I will be putting together my recommendation more formally. I think for sure that the $4 million bond question.
Yep.
So we can fix the windows.
The building referendum?
Yeah.
That
You know,
feels
and-
pretty good.
And if you, and I will share, I don't think, maybe I did share this with the board, kind of what went to the commissioner as far as
You did.
the review and comment. And the review and comment is for $5 million, and it has all the stuff that we've talked about within the WID stuff, and that was part of the stuff that got sent. So you have that choice if you want to limit it to the 4 million. There's possible some legislation, and this is nothing we can hang our hats on, but there might be some additional funds for LTFM, which might help us address some of the issues that we can't cover in the $4 million bond levy. We had over $7 million in projects that,
Yeah.
you know, so when we talk about educating people that here are some other things that we are doing to address some of these other needs. These are the needs that we do not have the revenue to address in a timely manner. With the operating levy, the 497, the one that takes out the seasonal rec and egg property, I wouldn't recommend that we try to push that one through. Even though there's lots of support for the operations of the building or of the our operating needs, the tax impact is higher. And again, there was a push last legislative session to try to get some state aid for schools to pass some operating referendums so that some of that seasonal rec dollars that the state collects, the schools could get, if you pass an operating levy, you could get some relief for those dollars. So there would be some aid possibly. But that's something that hasn't been passed. But there could be something down the road where it might be more advantageous if we needed to, 2 or 3 years down the road, look at our operating needs again. But at this time, I wouldn't recommend that.
How far back do you go for like your census, like for, I know that you do, I don't know what age you start counting, is it birth that you start counting or projecting what your enrollment's going to be?
Yeah,
From your
and
incoming.
there's some formulas that you can use so you can actually do some like averages. The ones that haven't even been born yet.
Okay.
Look at your projection, kind of what you're, I'm not even sure what the term is.
Well, and I guess what I was thinking, it might be helpful for us as a board and for the public to know that, in for this class year, we're not projecting, we are or are not projecting, like plus or minus. So they know that we're looking at that information, and I don't know how far back you have it.
That information actually was submitted to the commissioner. There's, in that long document.
Okay.
There it is where we did some projections. I can pull that out.
That's okay, I can look at it, because I can't remember what all was in that document.
I think it went out 5 or 10 years. I
Okay.
can't remember.
So then that information is basically out there, so we would just have to reiterate that in something, because, when they're saying we're not doing long-range planning, we are, and, maybe it's not as well known as it should be, even though, the public was invited to attend, it's some of those things that people don't realize are happening.
10 years ago, did we do projections? So basically now. I'm going with that. It'd be interesting to see if projections back then, how close to reality they are, because, I can give you a guess, but reality is going to vary wildly, especially with such a small group.
I know for sure May of 2020, right in the midst of COVID, we were talking about running an operating referendum this year. And I did have projections and numbers there. I have to pull that up. Before that, I'd have to look.
I can tell you in 1992, they thought the school was going to have 1,200 kids in it eventually.
So there's a lot of those things outside your realm of control as far as major industry changing.
Well, I would like to, I guess here's my thought is the 4 million building bond and then the capital projects. And what I'd like an opinion from the Donovan Group on is, should those be separate or together?
I heard somebody, maybe you asked them that, but they didn't.
I did, but they didn't really answer it.
Yeah.
That would be a good question for Matt Hammer at Ellers too.
Yeah.
Because we work with him.
Yeah,
Yep,
because I was the same way, they didn't really answer my question, and maybe I
Normally-
didn't state it clearly enough either.
Because they both
you know.
got higher percentages.
Yeah, and I think the capital projects, I think we can, they say operating funds are important. It's important that we operate. And I think we can explain to people that we can use that capital for operations,
Well, it would take some
Yes.
off them.
It supplements and therefore it will
And
help us
talk
out.
about the life of computers and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Because that's, the
Yeah.
replacement's really high on those. I mean, 5 years is the max, and I would even say 3, wouldn't you, Boyd?
Yeah, and I
Quite
feel,
honestly,
I've always thought it should be one question.
Laptop at home that's 10 years old with no, it has Windows 7 on it. With no
Okay.
Because I
problems
think enough
whatsoever.
people
Most
bought the building.
of what
Yeah.
the school
And
needs
it's not like there's a lack of support for the capital.
'cause that's all
But
online,
that's how I
and
feel.
the internet and email and stuff. What were you gonna say, Rob?
Well, no, I just, that in business,
Yep.
you know, you would never run something that's that old that doesn't do security updates and, you know.
Yeah.
And that maybe is
Yeah.
harder to convey to people who are using their 10-year-old laptop. You know?
Yeah.
An important thing that we have to convey is not just the technology levy. Yes, if they vote yes, those dollars have to be spent on what we say we're gonna spend them on the computers, the curriculum, the buses. But we also have to educate them on just the simple graph here that was in the survey on how state funding and inflation, you know, and they need to understand that the shortfall is what's really hurting us. And gas costs everyone more. And replacement for computers costs more. But if they can get past, well, we're just buying computers and see, well, those dollars that are not being spent out of our operating
Yeah.
dollars.
Can then be spent to pay for our
Will
gas.
help us maintain class sizes and
Staffing.
and staffing.
Yeah, and I think we can get there. I just would like to know what, if they have a strong gut feeling of combine them or keep it separate. And
I thought they were fairly specific about saying one, pick one.
pick
Pick
one.
And
your
I think
strongest.
Matt Hammer will lean more towards two.
But I felt like they were saying just pick one
Pick one.
of the three,
Right,
not
and
combining
That's what
them.
it- Well, don't.
That's how I took
But
it.
well, and that's what.
We didn't
the
really ask them,
answer
what
is,
if we
like,
pick
you
two?
put two separate
Yes.
ones on,
Yes.
Yeah.
or, like, they sounded like they said, don't combine them, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't quite get their answer about, well, what if we put two separate ones on?
She suggested you're gonna dilute your vote though.
And I was wondering if that's what she was talking about.
I thought that's what she was referencing was, you guys gotta pick. I mean, I think if you wanna pass one, you better pick one.
And that was, yeah, that was, I agree.
You know,
I think that was.
You could ask her that next time you talk to her, but
Yeah.
I think that was.
And so then if we only pick one, do you do the one that's the building bonds because that feels surefire, or is that?
I would
Not what
certainly
we
lean on
need.
the capital projects
Well,
levy
I'm gonna
because of its,
strongly encourage you to go.
to try to do
Well, then
both.
maybe that's a follow, what's if we want to? What would be the best way to do
So you
that?
guys, what I heard her say was, yeah, don't put more than one question, don't combine the questions, but if you want to go with two, separate them. Your
And
best
explain
odds
them.
are going with one, but if you want two questions,
Have it.
make sure you separate them.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I didn't think she ever really answered that, but, you know, but
So-
maybe I missed
So
it.
follow-up needed.
Yeah.
Yep, and I will provide
Well,
that.
she did
Yeah,
to start with. I don't
heard
want
her
to tell
say
you what
that
to
too,
do.
but at that point,
Yeah,
I
but-
wasn't sure if she was talking
What's your
about
gut feeling?
combining
You know,
or
I mean, she's,
combining or having a single one.
Way more experience than we do.
I'm glad you heard that
And she
part.
was trying to give her opinion without giving her
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
we're not gonna falter either way, tell her
Yeah.
that.
What other additional information do you need me to gather before we meet again?
Well, and I think I have to remember, like, we can do this again, right? So, say we pick one, it's not the end, like, our momentum's built, we've got the data, we can add another one, and we're, you know, if you have that ball rolling, so.
You mean 2 years down the road or
A
something?
year down the road, I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
you know, I don't think we have to limit ourselves, I want to be mindful of, like, if we can be successful somewhere, I want to make sure we do that, you know, number one.
And you couldn't picture we just gave you money 2 years ago and now you want more?
Yep.
Well, that's my
Yeah.
thought on that too, is we're gonna go through this
Yeah.
once successfully, so.
Well, and I guess my feeling is the bond, the building bond is very specific and those can be identified, those projects can be identified, and I think people can see the need for those. The capital projects, well, it is very important. It's a lot harder for people to grasp that piece. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's just my opinion. You know, they can't quite put their hands on that, what that is, you know.
But there is a little discretionary value to the capital projects.
There is, but if you can name the main projects you're gonna do, I mean, we're obviously gonna replace the windows. I mean, we've had much discussion about
Right.
that. You know, I mean, there's definite things that need to be done.
But the capital projects opens up, again, that bus route, that computer route, the technology stuff. You know,
Yes.
I think that's, and it's not like hugely discretionary like the referendum. And I think that's where we're trying to buy in, back into the trust of the community and say, this is what we're, you know, we can be very specific.
Well, and, you know, I mean, to say that, what does a school bus cost? If you were to price out a school.
Usually budget
I think it's about 100.
you go electric.
I thought they were about 100, but
Yeah.
who
I
knows
thought they were
how.
200.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask Mary in a minute because she seems to have.
I think they're around 100.
Yeah, high 90s.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just think there's a little value to, that's the problem I have with the building bond is it's so specific and we are not that good at seeing into the future, you know, into what we need and what we, you know, have to
And
adapt
the
to.
other piece that you know, and maybe it's part of me, it's how are we gonna come up with 4 million? We maybe can find a way to come up with 400,000.
That's good.
Well, we just cut 750.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's why I said we can maybe do the 400, but we certainly, it's gonna be pretty tough. We're gonna have to do things very piecemeal on windows and stuff if we're going to not go for the
Yeah.
building. I guess that's my whole piece about the, you know, it's just such a huge dollar amount, and it's not like we're addressing everything we need in the building. I mean, we're only addressing a little over half of it in dollar wise.
And we need to remember, when we look at our neighboring districts and do some comparisons, also we need to make sure that people understand that too. We have,
Is it easier? I think it's easier for people to grasp things. Oh, we need windows. We
That-
need, you
yes.
know, sidewalks. We need
Yes,
buses. Like, to me, I think that
and they're gonna see it.
yes.
they're
It's
gonna
like a
see it.
thing that you can touch and you can see and, you know, not like, oh,
Well, and you know, like the
The
bus
abyss.
thing.
curriculum
That's how
or
people feel.
technology. That just sounds so vague, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And that's nothing, it's just the reality we're dealing with, I think, is what.
You know, but, you know, like if you think about the bus thing, and you've got the mileage on the buses, we all know that. But we have to say, you know, the general public is gonna say, you know something, you used to have 11 bus routes or 10 bus routes and now you have 6. So what happened to those other buses? And, you know, we know that they're old, but we have to make sure that we share that. Does that, I don't know.
Well, that's
'Cause
how
it's
we've
like-
gotten away with not buying new buses.
Exactly,
for the last
yeah.
Couple, 3 years.
Exactly, is that we're decreasing our bus routes, and I can't remember,
but here's the thing
if there
though,
was 11 or
we're running
13.
fewer buses, but we're covering the same miles.
yes, and I
A lot of
understand that
miles.
So we're
piece.
gonna go through buses.
You put more
Faster.
miles on a bus
And
every
I
day.
understand that, but I mean, I think that piece has gotta all be rolled in with the information that we provide. You know, and it's like, Boyd says, well, I don't know if you need a new computer because I'm using one that's 10 years old. And there's gonna be a lot of people that think that about replacing technology.
I wanna say our computer cycle is like 7-10 years. Don't quote me on that, but
Yep.
it's
Well, just based off the ones he was getting rid of, it's like, yeah, it's about right.
You know, and I mean, but people, you know, like you say, we have to provide that information to people.
I mean, the way to do it is you give the high school kids the newer ones, and then they're done with it, it goes down to the junior high, and then goes down to the elementary, because the elementary doesn't need a whole lot of horsepower.
But I feel like computers is the obvious say. Like people want to know more of the details after that. Like it's going to pay for our IT staff. You know, it's another thing, not just computers.
The other kicker too, it's like, it's easy to say computer, but there's the software costs and all the other stuff.
Oh, there's a network cost, that's huge.
And
To network the computers is huge, and I don't know if people understand that. And not that we can't explain that to them, but it's huge.
So we just need to be, I mean, is there anything else that we need to provide you in order to like, get to the point where we can make a decision on Monday? Are we just looking for clarification between doing one
Or combining,
or combining?
or combining or not combining.
Or doing two?
I think, well, we can
I mean-
maybe figure out right now, does anybody think it's a good idea to combine the questions?
I do a little.
Anyone
Maybe if you focus it on the things that we're providing, because,
Like, which ones would you want to combine? Obviously, the building and the capital.
Capital.
yes.
Yeah, operating in my mind is out.
Yeah.
I'd just
I
rather
kinda
not even
feel the
talk about
same
it
way.
anymore.
Everyone else
kinda
agreed
done.
that operating.
And they said the same thing.
Yeah.
Is probably not gonna work out.
Yeah.
And this was good, because that's kind of what we thought before, and now that's, to me, that's a little more obvious. So
Yeah.
Then we're setting on 4 million.
I think so.
Especially if
Just
we
'cause
want
the
to get
numbers-
capital to pass, I think we got to limit
Yeah.
Yeah.
to 4 million then. I don't know. I just,
Well, and
In my
I'm not
mind, I
sure.
think it's more important to keep them separate.
I think we risk losing everything if we combine them. There wasn't enough support for the capital, in my opinion.
so lead with the buildings, go with the
Separate.
capital.
Buildings.
The percentages aren't that off between the two of them. If you look at the
But then you
percentage.
take it, I mean.
But then we gotta explain
If
two
one does,
questions.
I know.
we feel fairly confident that one will pass. And if the other one doesn't pass, then you go back to the drawing board and you can ask again
Because actually,
from what the
agree or
voters tell us.
disagree was yes on a $400,000 capital and 68% on the capital projects, or the bond, building referendum, building bond. So they weren't that far apart, but what
But they
would
were being
happen
viewed
is.
independently at the time.
Yes,
Right.
exactly,
Right.
yeah.
I would also highly suggest, since it's the one I know I really want, I would like to list the building fund first. In order that they're presented, because my
Yeah.
theory is that.
So if you can get over the
That
first
would
one
make a
with the
difference.
big dollar amount,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
that
the
was
big
what I
ask.
was thinking, yeah, just order.
Yeah, I think, I really think order would come into play, and I think we want that one to go through, so, I really want that one to go through, so I would definitely list that first.
Because if your thought is that if you say yes to $4 million, saying yes to 400,000
Oh,
is so much easier.
You know, for us.
Pennies to
be able
hundreds.
Make that,
Yeah.
I'll say yes to that one, then move to the next one.
Yep.
No.
Yeah,
and it,
Yeah.
you know, like if I knew that only one would pass, and I think.
That's a
it's
amateur
more obvious, but
psychology
Maybe that other one would
attempt
do.
right here, so.
You want
You
to
know,
look at capital?
Well, I was curious what the total was gonna be when both passed, and the total was gonna be when only the building bonds passed. Because I mean, if I was to do one, I would probably,
So I don't have that one. We do have that one, but I don't have it on me. So the building bond, 4 million building bond for $185,000 residents. Annual is $41.
Okay.
Monthly is $3.
$3 a month.
And then
That's for what?
That's for the building bond,
The building.
That's what the
bond.
tax would
for
increase.
$185,000 home.
would be for,
And just looking at the combination of.
41.
yeah, for the
But I was just trying to get a number difference between passing both and passing one.
Yeah,
capital project, the 400,000. $78 for the same residents, or
For when?
$7 a month.
so
We're
it's
looking at
almost.
So that's
$10 a month.
185,000.
10 versus 4, or 3.
I mean, I think
10 versus
I think
7
that's
versus
achievable.
3.
I really do. I think it's achievable.
Right.
that's
So,
how much
I
their
mean-
taxes would go up.
Yeah.
But-
So
And
if
then
you
one of the
combined
complaints
them,
being 30% or
it's $10 a
28%
month.
said taxes are going up too
$120 a
much.
year. I mean,
You have sort of a legitimate
That's pretty-
argument on a monthly basis
not
to
something
say,
you go, "Oh my
you
God,"
can have
you
them go up
know.
$3, you can have
Yeah.
them go up $7, you can have them go up $10. It's, there's a fairly.
other
And we
threshold.
kind of talked about that too, if we put it into one
I
question.
mean, the operating
they would
referendum is
see
what kicked that
the
into the high
$1
numbers.
amount instead of, oh, here's
Yeah,
$1 amount.
operating-
Oh, now you want to add another dollar
It's
amount?
another
Now you want to add
$101 a
You know what I
year.
mean?
$8 a month.
Anyway, the numbers are, I mean, so the argument about tax increases are fairly, I'm not saying they're negligible, minimal, but they're negligible. They're just not
And
that.
truthfully, don't you feel like the biggest tax hit is gonna be to the commercial properties?
Yeah,
And so those who have more get taxed more, and it's, so those are the people that, are probably in the absolutely nots, or a lot of them.
maybe, yeah.
But they also need to think of
They,
employees.
They
and
do,
keeping people
yes.
in the community
Yeah.
and having workers, so
Yeah.
they gotta kind of balance that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's where that communication is just this, trying to share how important it is to have a strong school in your community. I think that,
and I think the trust issue is another
Yeah.
really huge issue, and we need to keep on that.
keep working.
Sounds good, anything else? So you guys wanna wrap it up unless somebody else says something? Okay, thanks, Sean, thank you.
Turn them off.